All right, so Frankie, VHS. It's old. Why do we collect it still?
I have a theory that anything is collectible if it meets the following criteria. Everybody had it. Everybody threw it away. Time passes and everybody becomes nostalgic about it. That's the ingredients. You can apply that to antique cars. You will be able to apply it, I think, to DVD someday. Certainly with retro video games, right? Everybody always reminisces about that period of time where you could get a big box at a church. We literally, on our channel, in 2013, we found a box that's now valued at $800 for $10. It was just somebody's video game memories. It had like, dude, It had like a GameCube. It had a GBA. It had a game in the GBA, like Mario World. It had an N64. $800 worth of stuff valued from last year.
I kind of have similar stuff. When it came to the GameCube library, I just talked with a guy the other day, and he's paying exuberant prices for GameCube games. Back in the day when the Wii was in its heyday, you could go into a retro game store and buy it for, $15-20 a pop. And some of the games I got, I basically walked out of there stealing the games basically for the prices I paid.
So yeah, I think that's the secret. Is it's not that, I mean, yeah, rare things can be valuable. But a rare thing is not valuable unless somebody remembers it and has some kind of emotional attachment to it. So there has to be some kind of story. There's got to be some kind of emotional connection to that thing. And so, yeah, look, if it's funny. Sometimes on our channel, Red Cow Arcade, we'll talk about VHS collection, which kind of started with, the reason I got back into VHS after, tragically, I threw out a huge collection many years ago. But I kind of got back into it because I was I had a CRT. And I was playing on EverDrives, and then, the CRT is a 2002 Panasonic, where I was like, well, it's got a combo VHS. Maybe I could buy just a select VHS or two, maybe ones that really, I really remember or that I really feel nostalgic for.
And then the snowball just keeps going.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe around Halloween time, I could pop in a Goosebumps tape, just for that video store kind of vibe. And I have a 7-year-old, and she was kind of intrigued by like, oh, tapes, interesting. And there was also there's a fan of our channel, this guy Mark, who has like he's got an attic that is kind of like a video store, and he was like, hey, I heard you guys talking a little bit about VHS. I've got a few duplicates. You want me to send you the duplicates? So he started sending me a few, and then I was like, this is fun. And I think I got reacquainted with and reattached to the sleeves. I think there's something special about VHS sleeves. I will say, standard def DVD is my favorite format of all time.
Why is that?
I think that, I don't know, call it 2001 to 2007, something like that. That was during a time when the kinds of DVD releases were like the Lord of the Rings extended editions with a billion special features, or where the discs had special art on the actual disc. The menu was an extension of the movie with animated menus. I one that comes to mind is like Requiem for a Dream, famous Darren Aronofsky movie. The DVD menu was like an infomercial, and the infomercial is kind of like a subversive part of the movie. And I think at the time, I feel as though special features were a little bit more earnest and authentic to the filmmaking process. There was a little bit more vulnerability. There was a little bit more honesty around what it was like to actually be on that set. The interviews are a little bit more candid. You watch now like a Blu-ray special feature for a Marvel movie. Disney will really produce the hell out of that documentary. So you feel like you're getting like a little bit too much sheen. I don't know. I love Blu-ray, of course. I love 1080. I don't love 4K Blu-ray because they tend to color correct those.
And they tend to use a lot more. I think a lot of 4K movies are getting flack now because they're using AI, and I'm not really like the biggest I could care less if you use AI in something, but you see the quality of the picture, and like a bunch of people's faces in the background will look really like scary or whatnot, or they're messed up. I think Jaws 3 was the one that everybody just crapped on,
where they used AI to enhance the resolution, and then it looked weird.
Yes.
Yeah. So so of course I think 1080p Blu-ray is the way to watch. I'm sitting next to a 65-inch plasma that does 1080p plasma. Someday this poor TV will die, but for now, the plasma is a wonderful way to watch movies. But DVD still it has a place in my heart. Like when I put it into a CRT, nice stable image, it really brings me back to that moment. When I put in a VHS, I enjoy watching a VHS for sure. But I am always rudely reminded of how bad the quality is. Like, it is almost prohibitively bad. But nevertheless, the sleeves and collecting them, and a big part of VHS for me too is the what's the term? What term would you use to describe the previews that come before the movie? I was calling it on my podcast the pre-roll, and everybody was like, "I don't think it's called pre-roll, man." I was like, "All right, nerds, what do you call it?"
I don't know. I guess like just the commercials or whatever, because sometimes you'll have like a trailer for a movie, and then all of a sudden like I think it's the Batman tape that has like the Diet Coke. Where like Alfred's talking, but then all of a sudden you'll have another trailer. So yeah, I'm in agreement. Pre-roll.
We're gonna call it pre-roll and if you don't like it, you can stop listening to this dude's channel. You can unsubscribe from this guy. But on my channel, we'll call it whatever you want.
Exactly. No, I'm in total agreement when it comes to the DVD. I think the last good Blu-ray or DVD that had special features that felt like they were taking the camera along the way and they were like, okay, we're going to make something alongside the movie, was the Hobbit trilogy. They did that for the Blu-ray, and they made the documentary kind of like the original Lord of the Rings trilogy, and it was just people joking on set. You had people interviewing. It didn't feel as inauthentic as Disney does it now, like you were saying. So I'm in agreement there.
Yeah, or like I remember at some point along the line, you'd buy a Blu-ray, and like if you bought like a Warner Brothers Blu-ray, it always had that exact same side menu.
Oh gosh, yes, I hated that menu.
You know, or if you bought a what was the other one? There's another one that had these. Like if you buy like DC animated movies come to mind, where like there's just kind of like a bottom menu with these like really low resolution graphic buttons, and they're all prefab. I don't know. I think what probably happened was enough people provided feedback that they don't really watch the special features and don't really care about it. Because I remember being a kid, being a teenager who had aspirations to make movies, and I lived for special features. Like they were. This of course is pre-YouTube and pre-podcasts, and that when I wanted to put something on in the background while working, it was normally like a DVD special feature. I would watch the DVD special features long before I would watch, like, I'd get used to the movie, and then I would go back to those special features over and over again. I was so intoxicated by what it felt like to make a movie. But I talked to normies in my life, and they'd be like, I never watched that stuff. What do you need those for? I don't even use the chapters, they'd tell me. So I think probably what happened was Blu-ray manufacturers were like, let's not burn ourselves out making this stuff. Let's prefab it. Nobody cares anyway. And then streaming eclipsed it anyhow. So,
yeah, I'm in total agreement of, physical media first and foremost, because you can hold it in your hand. It's mine. No one can take this from me, period. But I do like how, when it comes to special features, I miss those more than anything. I'm with you because I'm in the exact same boat where YouTube and the internet for me, I didn't get until probably close to 2014, maybe 13. So pretty late, but that would be the same thing for me. If I wanted to know more about Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit or Jaws, I'd just watch the special features. The one that comes to mind the most for me was the Jaws Special Edition VHS, where it came with the Shark is Working VHS documentary.
Oh, yeah.
I loved that more than anything because that was before YouTube and stuff. That was the only way for me to know of the history of the making of Jaws.
The one. Do you mind if I hold up a tape to you? Would that be okay?
Yeah, dude, go ahead. I'm gonna do the same thing.
The one, I've told this. If anybody watches my channel or follows me, you've heard this too many times, and I apologize, but it's formative. I was 13, 14. I was at a friend's big group sleepover for his birthday. We all went to Hollywood Video to rent a movie. And, when you're in a big group of like 10 kids, trying to be the one who like the one who actually gets to rent the movie that he's advocating for is rare. But we South Park was really big at the time. And so I was I was just kind of starting to get to know who Trey Parker and Matt Stone were. I was only kind of aware of the show, not as much the creators. I remember I had like a TV guide or something that had like a little interview with them. And, you know, the construction paper, stop motion of it all just really fascinated a 14-year-old because it was so funny, but it was so crude. It was so accessible. I used to have a friend who would say he was a musician. He co-wrote Having Fun Up There, my fourth feature film. And he used to say, you know, a lot of people became musicians because they fell in love with the Ramones. Because the Ramones kind of showed you, like, oh, I could do it. You know, he's like, a lot of people love Stanley Kubrick. Stanley Kubrick doesn't make for a lot of people who want to become filmmakers. You know? It's a little too inaccessible. But so we're at Hollywood Video. And I'm like, yeah, I hear that these guys made feature films, maybe live action. I don't know. I've heard of a couple of them. And I come across a Troma film. You know, Troma had its heyday on VHS. And it's Cannibal the Musical. And so a Troma team release. That's what they would call these. And we brought this home. This, you know, not this very one, but basically this one. And we put it into a small, I imagine the TV was probably like 13 inches or something. It was really small for a room full of kids. It was in his attic. And the pre-roll was grotesque Troma movies. And I'd never heard of Troma before. And so suddenly we're watching this like outrageous content that they're advertising to us. Like watch Tromeo and Juliet and Terror Firmer and buy this book by this guy, Lloyd Kaufman. He's going to teach you how to make movies. And I was like, what am I looking at? Like, what have we encountered here? Because up to this point, my film diet had been Batman and Robin Hood and Disney and, you know, everything everybody watches, Star Wars, Indiana Jones. The movie starts playing, and in the opening sequence, there's this kind of gory scene where the main character is eating everybody. And the TV color was totally tuned wrong, and all of the fake blood, which already looked really schlocky and fake, was bright orange. And we were all like keeled over laughing at like the orange blood and the fakeness of it all. It was like a really joyous moment. Then the movie continues, and suddenly it's a comedy, and suddenly it's a musical, and suddenly it's clear that it's being made by and cast a bunch of friends. This is not made by Hollywood. This is a bunch of guys who thought it'd be fun to make a movie. And this was the very first time ever that I could see the filmmaking experience through watching the film. Up to that point, like, the illusion always worked on me. But this is the time where I was like, I'm enjoying this because I can imagine what it's like to be them out on set making this movie. So, I don't know, maybe a month or two later, my friend John Hunt, who I went on to make lots of web series with and stuff, he's all over our channel. He was older than me, and this thing called Amazon.com started to exist. And he's like, do you want anything from Amazon.com? And I was like, yeah. I said, give me that Cannibal the Musical movie. And in came the VHS, and I watched it, like, honestly, probably in a row. Not like no breaks, no dinner, I watched it like 8 times. I was just trying to like drink this in. And yeah, that's what started the bug, and that's what started it was an early DVD too. Then they put out a really good DVD release of it, but that was what made me starved for behind the scenes content. I think I was like an artistic person. I was interested in animation or how to use technology to make special effects, and you know, I was compelled by that kind of thing. But this was the first time where I was like, oh yeah, I can really see myself. And so anyway, I threw out the VHS at some point, tragically, and just recently I went on eBay. I was like, I wonder if I can pick up a Cannibal the Musical VHS, and it was sealed. I have now unsealed it.
Oh.
But it's in great condition. I do not like my VHSs in bad condition. There's a lot, you know, I belong to the Facebook groups and stuff, and they almost always advertise like really dinged up, banged up, you know, like, you know, when you start to see like the paper through the sleeve, and so I don't like that. I like this nice gloss finish. So I've got a good copy of my probably the most formative movie that I own.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, I mean, I've got movies like that too, where, you know, you watch it at a young age and you're like, man, I could do that, or like I could see me and my friends doing that. Like Scott the Woz was kind of like the first time I saw something where it was a high enough quality, but it was still something where it's just like, these guys are just with their friends hanging out, and they just made a video together on something you love.
Well, isn't that interesting? Yeah, that YouTube now functions that way for so many people. James, we're all function that way for so many people.
Yep.
But I'm old enough to. I assume. Are we the same age, or are you? How old?
I'm
are you?
22.
Yeah. Okay, you're a young guy. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm 38, so I'm old enough to like the idea that anybody would go on YouTube and do anything that resembles what they did in the movies was novel and kind of like still is novel. Like I'll never quite outgrow it. So yeah, it's really interesting that. In fact, Jason Graves, who's been on our channel, he was saying that not too long ago. He was like, dude, like the Scott the Woz guy he's launched 1,000 ships too. You know, every once in a while in different spheres of creative influence, there'll be some voice that launches 1,000 voices. You gotta love that.
I know it's something that it will never change, but it's something that always, just kind of wows you, I guess, is the best term.
Yeah. Yeah, changes the way you see yourself.
Yeah. Well, I guess for me, one of my coolest tapes that I have, and it's just one of those things where I love the artwork on it. The movie, not so much because it's not the director's cut, but Legend by Ridley Scott with Tom Cruise. Dude, This is one of my dad's favorite movies of all time, but you have to watch like the director's cut or whatever, the 3-hour one for the proper experience. But it's still really cool to have an original copy of the first print. And, the artwork's amazing. You have darkness and Tom Cruise there on the front. So
is that a hologram that I'm seeing?
No, it's just the lighting. Sorry.
So the DVD actually it does have a hologram finish.
Oh.
And that has amazing special features too. It's got 2 versions of the movie, one with like a pop soundtrack and one with a classical soundtrack, and 2 completely different cuts. One that was theatrical, that was like studio interfered, and one that is Ridley Scott's cut. Ridley Scott famously will always recut his movies. It's a fascinating movie. They built an entire like enchanted forest indoors in a soundstage, and it burned down accidentally. Ridley Scott tells a fascinating story about that, where he came to set and it was burned down, millions and millions of dollars, and he was like, so I just took a breath and decided to go play some tennis.
Yeah, I think also I think Tim Curry, who plays Darkness, got so mad one time during the makeup process. It was 5 hours or 4 hours of makeup that he already had done, and he just tore it all off and just left or something like that, if I'm remembering.
Every time I see him in that makeup, all I can think of is how painful it must be for the eyeballs when they put in those giant contacts and all that weight on the head. But man, he looks amazing. And he may be the only actor that ever has lived that could act through that makeup, where the Tim Curry-ness of it all still presents itself. Yeah, I don't. They post-processed his voice a little bit. That you can, I'm thinking of the scene where he's trying to seduce the young lady. And he's like, sit and talk with me.
Shit. Yeah, no, I love Legend. That's always going to be one of my favorite movies.
Yeah, well, that's perfect for VHS. Would you agree that there is a kind of movie that is best for VHS? Like a lot of people, you'll go to collectibles and they'll say horror VHS. Those are always kind of preferred or whatever, But schlock or indie movies, wouldn't you say that there's a certain kind of movie?
Yeah, definitely. I think for myself, I'm looking more for tapes that when I was a kid I watched, but there are certain tapes that, they either have unique artwork like Legend does for that tape specifically, or something like Godzilla tapes. I collect Godzilla tapes, and all of those have unique artwork for every single tape, because some of those had the English never had the copyright. So for instance, one of them, you have 50 different tapes for them you could collect. So it's pretty cool.
Let me ask you this. A guy that was born in 2002, what's he so nostalgic for VHS for?
Okay, so I was born in 2001, but when it came to DVD and VHS, my family had a mini Blockbuster in our house, basically. We had a whole room dedicated to movies. It was that many tapes we had. And so we had like the complete Sanford and Son on VHS. So that took up like, you know, a whole section of the room.
Can I tell you something? Fascinating that you would bring that up.
Really?
Well, when I was a kid, when you would watch, especially if you watched daytime television, which was a certain type of television, yeah, they would run a few commercials a million times. Flintstones vitamins, I've fallen and I can't get up, and hey, why don't you buy the entire VHS collection of Sanford and Son? There was what comes to when I think of, you know, because VHS is not a good format for collecting an entire television series.
No,
it just takes up too much room. But what comes to mind is the Sanford and Son collection, Monty Python's Flying Circus. They ran a lot of ads for that, and Star Trek, the original series, or maybe I don't think Next Generation. One of the Star Treks was always advertised.
Huh. Yeah. So we had all of those tapes. So that took up a whole section of the room. We had just everything that you could ever want on VHS. And then we had a few select DVDs in the early 2000s. And then slowly we started to replace our VHSs with DVDs, just slowly by slowly. But, I mean, we probably didn't get rid of VHS fully until, like, 2010, I want to say.
So you were watching
like
VHS tapes as a young man
constantly
throughout your whole... Yeah.
Like, I mean, like Disney, like I never, like we probably didn't have like a lot of the newer Disney DVDs. We had all the Diamond Collection Disneys, so that's how I watched Disney. You know, Jaws 2, Jaws 3. I mean, just, you name it, we had it on VHS, basically.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I remember she's my wife now, but I've been I started dating her when I was 14 and then just never stopped. But I remember going to her house as a teenager, and she had a pretty big VHS collection. It was like shelves worth of VHSs. And some of them were pretty good finds, like good childhood ones and stuff. And I was like, yeah, all right, I'm into it. And now, now we go to more and more, like we have a really great flea market here in Massachusetts called the Raynham Flea Market. We've done a few videos on it. They normally have pretty good selections for VHS, or church fairs that we'll go to, or there's this place in Rhode Island called Black Lodge Collectibles, and I'd say like 30 to 40% of the stock there is VHS. And she's gotten a little bit into it with me too. I don't think you can't see it, but I just recently bought these like 48-inch like glass cases that are specifically made for VHS. So it's starting to encroach on the household.
Oh,
but,
no!
But she's actually enjoying it. Because she'll, invariably we'll walk into one of these places and she'll be like, are you going to buy a million VHSs? Then she'll see one that she carries. She'll see Meatloaf Bat Out of Hell 2 or something. Or,
Meatloaf is my favorite artist of all time.
Nice.
Yes.
Nice. I love him too.
Man, yeah, that's awesome. But I mean, for me, yeah, I'm sure I'm still young, but I mean, VHS was part of my life longer than any form of physical media outside of maybe DVD. But I mean, by the time we were starting to get DVD in, I mean, streaming was coming in at that point. And so, yeah. I mean, Blu-ray, I don't have any real attachment to. Every once in a while, yeah. I go for the collector's edition. Like I just ordered the collector's edition of the Godzilla -1 physical edition that has like 4 Blu-rays and stuff, so that's pretty cool. But I got the complete Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles classic collection on DVD. It's like a 26 box set, dude. It's
I didn't even
massive.
know that existed.
Yeah, it was like at Walmart for $25, dude.
Wow. At Walmart, really?
Yeah, I just walked into Walmart one day for like a car part, I think, and I walked out with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
I had to buy a bigger house, but I had Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Yeah, I have a few of those, like the Pizza Monster one, and I have the Coming Out of Our Shell tour. I don't currently have, as a child, I had the live action 1, 2, and 3, and I those are special, especially the first one. Everybody my age knows the Pizza Hut commercial that came before the first Ninja Turtles movie. It's this like baseball game that some kid's at, and there's this song, off in the distance, the game's dragging on. Everybody knows this. If you're of a certain, I walked into this Black Lodge Collectibles place I mentioned, and I was like, I'm looking for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and they were like, "Is it because of that Pizza Hut commercial with the baseball game?" I was like, "Yes, it is." I swear, the commercials are half of it, man.
It is like I think Sandlot had a lot of like weird commercials on VHS if I remember correctly, like a dad and his kid playing baseball. I could be misremembering that. Batman with its Diet Coke commercial.
Yes, and
Um,
Daffy and Bugs selling you a 900 number. You could call a 900 number to order Warner Brothers merchandise, like ties and baseball caps and that sort of thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Godzilla tapes would always advertise like if a certain company that you were watching the tape from had access to more, they would say like go out and buy this tape. I think Tremors has a trailer for Tremors 2. I have a sealed copy of that right here.
Oh wow, Tremors is a
That's
great VHS movie.
Oh yeah, and I got Tremors 2 here as well. So those two are Tremors is a big part of my life, man.
Do you go for sealed? Are you looking for sealed?
No, I just if I walk into a store and it's there, like I Tremors was just sitting on a shelf sealed. Few of these Godzilla tapes that I have here were just kind of sitting on a shelf. I've got a big bad box edition that was just kind of sitting on a shelf, and that's all sealed. So I don't really care. It's kind of like video games too, where I don't really care if a video game is sealed. It's cool if you have one that's sealed. Like that's a pretty
Yeah.
cool flex. But it's like I don't really care.
Well, especially if you're going to be tempted to play it or to watch it,
Yeah.
then you kind of want one that's beat up or something so you can actually play it. One that one I insisted on buying not so long ago was this is the very first episode of Goosebumps, of Fox
Oh,
Kids
wow.
Goosebumps. It was The Haunted Mask. The Goosebumps, the famous R.L. Stine book series for children, they made a very faithful, like kind of perfect age, um, you know, age demographic for horror, like baby's first horror was really what this was. This and like what was that? Are You Afraid of the Dark? They were both shot in Canada too. You could tell because everybody's like, "I'm sorry." Um, but what's so a couple of things memorable about this. One is it is clamshell, which is kind of interesting. You don't know what's going to
Mm-hmm.
be clamshell and what's not going to be.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm actually producing a boutique VHS release of my web series Boxmac, and we talked about clamshell, and I was like, "Nah, got to be cardboard sleeve. It's got to be."
Mm-hmm.
But this has at the very beginning before the show, and this was like a special presentation. This was like I think like a 55-minute TV show. It was like a 2-part TV show, so it's kind of like a little movie. So they were able to release full episodes, just like one per tape, and then it kind of had parody with the book series. So
Mm-hmm.
you buy the Haunted Mask book, you buy the Haunted Mask tape. But before it, they had a little making of A Night in Terror Tower, another tape you could go pick up. So you get to watch like a making of some other show, and then you watched your primary show. And this is good stuff for like if you want some 4x3 children's horror around Halloween time. I was hoping my 7-year-old still she finds it a little too frightening. It's in fact Goosebumps had a parental guidance thing right at the beginning. They would say this is rated Y7 because it may be too spooky for children under 7.
Goosebumps, I don't have any real nostalgia for, and that's cute that your girl is scared of that.
She's too scared.
When it came to horror stuff, I was never a big fan when I was a kid. Like, I mean, I would watch Tremors, and that wouldn't scare me, but you know, but I was always a fan of the Twilight Zone and Tales from the Dark Side series as a kid. But I wish I could find some of those on tape. Hopefully, I can. But so Goosebumps, I did discover later down the road, like a few years ago. I was like, oh, there was a Goosebumps show, and Tales or the Are You Afraid of the Dark as well. It's pretty good for little kids, actually. Like it's kind of like an entry level Twilight Zone or an entry level Tales from the Dark Side. I really do
it's
enjoy
perfect.
it.
Yeah,
And
the
there's
books
some
were
that
like
are pretty
too.
good.
The books were like that too. There was a sequel to Haunted Mask. I got that. There was Night in Terror Tower. I have that. This is very Twilight Zoney. This is the kind of story you could tell that R.L. Stine started it. He was like, all right, I want to make something that takes place in a torture tower. And then he didn't know where else to take the story, and it just goes in like a crazy direction with time travel and kings and queens, and it just completely derails. And there was what's this one? What's this one? The Werewolf of Fever Swamp. Here, a little bit of lighting there. and then another famous Stay Out of the Basement. So I've got a decent little Goosebumps collection here. I think these are really good VHS fodder. If you're I'm pleased to have these, and I
might have to pick those up if I can find them.
Yeah. That's the other thing about collecting for VHS that right now is so much fun. I do think that they're going to become more and more valuable as they become more and more scarce and more people collect for it. But it is a pretty inaccessible format. You do have to have the right TV for it. You have to have a VCR. And that hopefully will be a barrier of entry so that it doesn't just become like an inflated NES type of situation.
Yeah.
Because right now, man, like I'll walk into a collectibles place. I'll see a lot of stock. I'll see a lot of stuff in good quality. I'll see tapes that like everybody wants. Like it's not like those are always sold out, and they tend to be $3 to $4 per. And it's like for a guy who just enjoys collecting and enjoys like a little bit of a hunt, it's kind of perfect because the price is right. I'm not necessarily like looking for one the tapes I insisted on having, I already have. So it's more like I'm just open to what they've got. It scratches the collecting itch in a way that's not like very destructive.
Yeah, no, I totally agree because I mean, video games, I mean, for me, I never got rid of any of my video games growing up. So I still have all of my childhood games. Like I never have to worry about going back and like, oh, I miss Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door. I got to go and buy a $200 copy. Yep. Nope, still got my copy I paid $5.99 for. But
yep.
I think the same thing with VHS. It's such a neat thing to collect because there's so much required. Like you were saying, you need that VCR. You need a CRT. I was thinking the other day because vinyl is very popular now with people my age at least. And I think vinyl's pretty cool. But I was thinking, okay, will VHS ever get to a point where along with your 4K Blu-ray, do you think they might actually make like a VHS copy of newer movies?
Well, there is some of that. In fact, I was hoping I'd have them before I came on here, but there's a kind of like an Etsy seller that's famous in the VHS circles. Her name is I think it's pronounced Kadi, Kadi.
Okay.
Kadi Tapes, and the whole thing is that she'll dub a new movie to like an LP VHS. But she does these wonderful designs for the sleeves. She prints like limited run sleeves. So I just bought Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Joker, and Logan on VHS.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and I think that was $90 for the whole. Because you're going to pay a premium for this boutique service that she does. But yeah, more recently Terrifier 2 and I think Terrifier 1. Those were released in Walmart stores on VHS as 2-tape movies. So yeah, there's definitely some of that happening. Like, and they tend to go for like when these boutique runs come out, they tend to go for like $30 a tape. And I'm doing it. Like I mentioned earlier, I was approached by a fan who's a VHS enthusiast. He goes to VHS Fest. His name is Levi, and he just for his collection, he wanted to take I do a web series called Box Mac where it's like a comedy cooking show where we review every mac and cheese on the planet. And over the years, we did Halloween specials, and we'd shoot them in 4x3, and we would add special effects and fog machines, and all this. We did a whole Mystery Science Theater 3000 episode with the silhouettes, and it's all like perfect for 4x3 VHS fodder. And I used to fantasize, wouldn't it be fun to do like a limited run VHS of this? So he was like, well, I'd like to make one for my collection, just as a fan of you guys. And he's like, do you think, I'm because it's all, most of the cooking segments are shot in 16:9. He was like, do you think I could, like have your permission to like pan and scan your work so it would be 4x3? And I was like, yeah, sure. And then then he came back and he's like, well, your credits are in 16:9 and it has to stretch now. Would you be able to re-render the credits so that it's in 4x3? And then like, how about the intro? Can you do that? Well, how about this part of it? And I ended up like re-editing and reformatting 6 different episodes and 5 Halloween shows for what's going to be a 2-tape release that we're going to do. And we put a bunch of commercials and pre-roll beforehand. And I did a bunch of commercials that were now available on video cassette and that kind of thing. It's going to be awesome.
You know what you should do too? Is you should add like different people you've collaborated with on your VHS. So like all of a sudden, like for instance, like the last guy you talked to, or like whoever like that you talked about with Cinemassacre, you could be like, go check out this guy who's going to have a VHS release, or Zetharoni or whatever. That would be pretty funny.
Right. Yeah, advertise like other releases. Yeah. So it's like suddenly 4x3 is becoming this preferred thing. It's so funny. We just oscillate between formats arbitrarily, as time goes on. There is something about 4x3, man. Like Zack Snyder's Justice League, that was all 4x3. I think that was going to be the aspect ratio for his IMAX release of that movie if he ever released it in IMAX. So like when you watch Zack Snyder's Justice League on HBO Max, you're watching it in 4x3. So somebody should make a VHS of it.
I mean, I've always preferred widescreen when it comes to movies, ever since I was a kid, because then you can see more of what's going on the sides. I mean, that's just for me. But I mean, 4x3, it is classic, kind of,
Well, but so you bring up an interesting philosophical point, which is, am I buying the tape to watch the best version of the movie? No. I'm buying the tape to preserve a version of the movie that came out at a point in time. And that's
the tape even works when you buy it, because half the tapes that we buy, they're wrecked and they've got the squiggle lines or the staticky lines that.
Yeah, how about when you buy one and no amount of pushing the tracking button fixes the situation? You're like, I think I got a bad tape here. But I was going to say this earlier. It was funny. I was recommending to my podcast host EJ. I was saying you should buy a CRT with combo DVD and VHS, and I was going, I assume that's probably the best connection to the TV is when it's right there on the board. And we got a lot of comments that were like, no, those are awful, often awful. You should get always S video. And I'm sure they're right. I'm sure technically they're right. But I'm sitting there going like, hey, if I wanted the best possible version of the movie, I'd buy something called a Blu-ray.
Exactly.
I'm not necessarily going for the steadiest connection. But then again, retro games are like this too. You also don't want it to be too unnecessarily poor quality. So there's some balance. There's some like, I've preserved the shoddiness of the era, and I'm also watching something that I can actually watch and not be frustrated by and walk away from.
Yeah, I just use composite. Like a lot of people that use S video, or what is that other one that?
Oh, SCART.
People. Yeah, SCART. Like, it's cool when someone hooks, like, I've seen EJ's videos of SCART hookups and stuff, and that's cool. But, I mean, at that point, it's like you're doing all this work, and I mean, I still don't get it, I guess, is the nicest way to say it.
Yeah, I get it. I get not getting it. In Europe, SCART is like a standard. That was their composite. So they watch us soldering SCART ports to the back of our TVs. And they're like, what a bunch of suckers. Of course, I have Star Wars, but I have a special version of Star Wars, okay? First of all, this is the one I had as a child. This is not the widescreen edition. This is not the one that has the half Vader, half Stormtrooper, half Yoda faces. That was considered, EJ just showed me this recently because he bought those. They were considered George Lucas's final video release of Star Wars. There's a note in there that says, this final video release of Star Wars. But those were widescreen. Those were the ones that was the same master that went on the LaserDisc, which for a while was like the best way you could watch the original theatrical releases of Star Wars. Not that there is an original theatrical release of Star Wars. They iterated every time they released the movie. But pre-special edition, let's call it. This is the CBS Fox video release. Yes, CBS Fox Video. They had a joint venture in I guess video distribution. So this is a 4x3. This came in a box set. I never owned the box set.
I had the box set.
Did you really?
Yeah, because it came with all on one side of the box set. It was like a special written letter, I believe, by George or one of the cast members, and then on the other side, it had all the awards and nominations of the Oscars that the first Star Wars movie had.
Oh, you know what? So I have the corresponding LaserDisc release of the same version, and it has all that. Cool. It has that material on laser. Are you into LaserDisc at all?
No, I've wanted to like check it out, like just maybe get one for like one movie if I'm interested or if I see it. But it kind of is expensive around my area. I mean, we're talking like $25 to $35 a pop for a LaserDisc, and I'm like,
Yeah, you'd have to be.
If I see one for
selective.
$5, it's like I'll go for it. But in the meantime,
Every
I'm
once in a
good.
while, I'll see a lot online that's like, "Hey, man, for $4,000, here's every LaserDisc that's ever been created." I'm like,
Hmm.
that's kind of intriguing. Like,
Hmm.
just have a full LaserDisc collection.
That'd be
Um,
cool.
but I think you should get into LaserDisc. I
Okay.
think you would. Unlike VHS, you're not going to be able to buy it in high volume. But man, those like vinyl type covers are pretty compelling.
Hmm.
It's an analog signal, same as VHS. It's not digital LaserDisc. Um,
Yeah, wasn't the one before LaserDisc the digital version where it was like you slid it in and
yeah,
then you slid it out? That was
yes.
digital, correct?
CED is what you're thinking of. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, that's the weird wonky one.
yeah, yeah. Where actually you put it in with its case. I know what you're talking about.
Hmm.
Yeah. Um, but whereas LaserDiscs they deteriorate and rot. Um, I believe they're made out of. Are they made out of silicone? I don't know, but they. I don't know that the video is all that higher quality, but the audio definitely is higher quality than VHS. Like you can tell there's a distinct difference with the audio.
Isn't the picture smaller too? Like it doesn't go full screen or whatever on your CRT?
I don't know about that. I think they all look good on my. I think they're 360p, and I think
Okay.
VHS is 240. So I think they're technically a little bit higher resolution. Um,
Just barely.
I recently bought Tiny Toon Adventures: How I Spent My Vacation on Laserdisc. Why? Well, it's summer vacation. I got a 7-year-old, and I wanted to introduce her to a classic. Man, the animation is exquisite, and if seeing it on Laserdisc, it was quite fun. They are loud though. You can, it's one of those formats where you can really hear it.
Hmm. Oh! It's like a Dreamcast cripe.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I have a modded Dreamcast to solve that problem.
Dude, I still have my Dreamcast because it's one of the ones where you could just burn CDs. So I just burned like every single Dreamcast game in existence, which I was
That's the way
fine
to
with.
go.
But I remember when I first plugged in my Dreamcast, I was like, is it supposed to be making that noise? And I was like looking up like, okay, maybe the buyer just sold me a nasty Dreamcast. And then like everybody was like, nope, it's supposed to sound like an old school printer.
Yeah. Well, anyway, Star Wars always rises to the occasion, and this release also there was a fourth VHS you could send away for that was called From Star Wars to Jedi. I have that as well.
What does that look
It
like?
was like a 55-minute making of Star Wars that was made special for
Oh.
this release, and it was, in kind of the classic titling, it just said From Star Wars to Jedi on the front. And there's commercials at the beginning of each of these that it's a trailer for each of the original 3 movies, and then it goes, and also now available From Star Wars to Jedi, the making of George Lucas's class, and it goes through the whole. Get them all now on home video. Exciting home video.
That's pretty cool. I
Yeah.
had that, but my friend graduated college and he's a bigger Star Wars fan than I am now. And
Mm.
I just can't with all the new Disney stuff. I can't keep up with it, man. Um, so I gave him all the I gave him the first two prequel movies because I had those on VHS, and then I gave him
Mm.
that big box set, which he thought was pretty cool.
Yeah. 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 What do you got for a tape over there?
All right. So I want to get the third movie, and I want to get the extended editions. I know we were talking about it earlier, but Lord of the Rings, man.
Heck yeah.
I I love the Lord of the Rings trilogy first of all because um one of the greatest movies of all time, obviously, or trilogies,
Yep.
whatever you want to say.
Yep.
But on VHS, there's an added quality, in my opinion, because the first movie, especially The Fellowship of the Ring, they didn't use that much CGI. But when you see it on streaming or a Blu-ray, you see it. Like, it's just not good quality
In
nowadays
fact,
at all.
they redid a little bit of it for that 4K extended edition release. They claim that they didn't redo any digital effects, but they totally did. In particular, there's a scene in the Council of Elrond where it's very obvious that there's a little person wearing a Frodo mask,
Hmm.
and in 4K, it's very, very visible. And yeah, they wrote it. They put an Elijah Wood face on the mask instead. And I was like, hey, what if I want the mask like it was in the original version? Yeah, we're getting into like George Lucas stuff here.
Yeah, exactly. Like they should have still like I mean I know George Lucas like Star Wars was always supposed to be a movie that was never fully complete, But George Lucas seriously should have had it where it's like, you can experience the original editions if you want, and then you can experience the newer versions by me.
Well, so here's some interesting trivia. There was a 2004, I think, DVD release of Star Wars. It was a big deal when that came out on DVD because it had not come out on any new formats since, I don't know, 1996 or something. Those half faces I described earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And there was talk of, I vaguely remember this, but there was talk of George Lucas making his own digital video format, and he didn't necessarily want to go with DVD because he might have released his own format to compete. And so it was, it was a big deal that Star Wars came out on DVD, and they're wonderful releases of Star Wars. They've got,
that includes the originals.
I'm talking about the originals, yeah.
Yeah, that includes like the newer versions as well as the originals, right, on those DVD releases.
So this was after the 1997 special editions. The remastered, the true DVD presentation on those discs was the special editions. And it also had a re-rendered Jabba the Hutt, and there's a few other things that changed as well. I believe that was that the release? Maybe it was more like 2005. Maybe it was 2005. It was after Revenge of the Sith, because that was the first time that they replaced Anakin's ghost at the end of Return of the Jedi with Hayden Christensen. It was on that.
Oh, yeah. Because I remember my dad being mad about that.
Yeah, well, I'm basically your dad, okay? Because I'm probably about old enough to be.
We had all those editions growing up. Like, my dad is the biggest Star Wars nerd. So, I mean, you could just tell, like, you can just see, like, how he probably thinks of Star Wars now. But we had all of the editions. We had the originals on the special version that you have, where it's the 3 and then it's like a special sleeve.
Yes.
And then we had the half faces, because I always remember asking my dad why we had like so many versions of Star Wars, because I never got it when, you're 5. And he was like, this one has better sound, this one has mono sound, and then this one has a better picture. And he was like explaining it all to me, and I'm like, I still don't get it,
But, what I was going to say was, on those DVDs, on the flip side, I think it was on the other side of the DVD, they did have the original theatrical edition, which was kind of novel because Lucas has been really quite clear that he doesn't want to release those. But they were not remastered.
I'm surprised Disney hasn't taken that opportunity. Like, could you imagine the publicity they could have gotten for Disney Plus if they would have said day one for Disney Plus, original Star Wars trilogy, non-compromised, right there for you.
It's so bizarre, in fact, you wonder if it was in the contract that they can't do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because the ones that are on Disney Plus are the ones that were going to be released into theaters, because he was going to release the entire
3D versions
in 3D, and then and so what you got on streaming was what they were gonna put in theaters, but then they stopped after Phantom Menace, because then the Disney acquisition went through. But yeah, the theatrical versions that are on those DVDs are the 360p LaserDisc versions. They're not the so that's the best you got, is those LaserDisc versions. Or I guess it would have been cool. VDI. There was a format called VDI. Those are 480p. That was the best. And so, like, when you see like the fan edits where they take the best versions, or the televised versions, and they put it all together and try to reconstruct a theatrical 720p 1080p version of it, they're upscaling those VDIs in many cases.
Yeah, I'm not a really big fan of like going back and correcting things. It makes sense for some things, but I've never been a fan of like people going back to a work and kind of tweaking it a little bit if you don't have access to the original version of it. And I guess that's the same for Lord of the Rings. But the reason I like the VHS version of Lord of the Rings is when you're watching it on a CRT and it's that original one with the terrible special CGI effects, it actually doesn't look that bad. Like, it looks good. Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of compresses it into something where you can kind of buy into the illusion a little bit better. Yeah. There's a great YouTube video that I recommend called "Can Lord of the Rings Ever Be Remastered?" by a YouTuber named Jesse Tribble. Okay. And it's a 20-minute video that goes into every single HD release of the theatricals and extendeds. And if you're a cinephile like you are, and you care about film preservation, you're going to be very frustrated by the end of this video because you're going to learn that Lord of the Rings extended editions have never been released properly. Like, not even close, actually.
Not even like because there's the extended editions are on VHS. At least the first Fellowship of the Ring is on extended.
Oh, well, if releasing on VHS is satisfactory for you, but what I mean is if there's never been a 1080 or 4K release of the extendeds, that's because they've either mucked with the color correction, or they mucked with the special features, or they put like a ghosting effect on flashbacks to make it match The Hobbit. Like they've actually messed with releases of Lord of the Rings way more than I think is publicized. Watch that video. You'll be frustrated, like enraged.
I will.
Yeah.
Especially if they try to make it more like The Hobbit. I hate those movies more than life itself.
Yeah, they're pretty much his prequels, aren't they? You know, literally and figuratively.
Except for the fact that, with George Lucas, he could make up anything, and you would just be like, all right, it's George Lucas. There's not like something that they're messing with necessarily. While The Hobbit was just this simple children's story, and then you make it this 8-hour, 10-hour epic that it didn't need to be.
That's a rare case where I think there are fan edits that I've watched. There's like a 4-hour edit that gets rid of all the chuffa. I mean, it gets rid of like 7 hours. There's like 7 hours of this thing is gone. And you're just watching 4 hours, and it focuses the story around Bilbo. I think Martin Freeman's a good Bilbo. I think the Gollum sequence is really great. I think that Benedict Cumberbatch's Smaug is really great. I think like the Bard from Lake Town was well cast. I think there's a lot going for it. It's just that there's a lot not going for it.
Yeah, that's the thing with me too.
I recommend the fan edits for sure. They do focus the story quite a bit.
Okay, I will too, because most of my problems lay with the second movie and the third movie. With the whole Lake Town drama, all of that's so unnecessary.
Yeah.
The same thing for the made-up elf that was like this weird love triangle stuff. I mean, I was just like, no.
Yeah. Kate from Lost, as we call her. Yeah.
Yep, or the Wasp.
Yeah, exactly. And now she retired from acting, that woman.
Yeah, so when it comes to Lost, my mom was a massive fan of it. And we never had the time to watch it on its day because it was always like, I think a Thursday or a Tuesday during a time. And so we would always tape those, and then my mom would watch them on VHS later down the road.
Wow. On tape?
We would tape. She would tape them because we never had television. We had bunny ears. We never had cable or anything like that. So we would always get Lost.
Over the air channels and stuff, yeah.
Yep, so my mom would have to tape it. And then my mother also got rid of my entire Godzilla collection as a child. I was so distraught at that.
Oh, no.
I'm trying now to get my collection back slowly by slowly. But during the time in the early 2000s, Godzilla was still not available on DVD fully. A lot of them were not. Like, certain editions would run out of copyright or whatever, and then they just took forever to come out. Like, even now, we're still not at a point where every single one's on Blu-ray in a great format. And so...
Who put out the DVDs? Did Shout Factory put out the DVDs?
It's fair game. Like, there can be one that... Like, Criterion has the Showa era right now, and then Miramax has Biollante, and then Sony has some of them as well. So you're not going to get like this big bad boxed edition collection like you would hope for. Yeah. But so anyway, my parents were getting rid of the VHS collection. We had most of stuff on DVD at this point. Godzilla tapes were special to me as a child, and so I kept those in my room at the time. I come home from school one day, and this was me in elementary school. They're just gone out of my room. And I'm like, where'd my tapes go? And my mom's like, oh, I gave them to Goodwill. And I'm like, no! And she didn't realize that a lot of the tapes that I had were not available yet. So I still had to wait a long time for some of them to come to DVD. I was pretty upset.
That's very upsetting. Yeah, that's no good at all. I think I would have. Yeah, I think that would have been it for me and my mom.
You got rid of my Godzilla tapes? I'm moving out.
How dare you? Yeah, the only other one that I've got quite a few of these, and I thought I would show it off. Is,
show off, man.
these Super Mario Brothers tapes.
Oh, I
I've
love those shows.
Yeah. Yeah, and as a kid, these were kind of like they aired the Super Mario Brothers Super Show air with the live action sitcom, Lou Albano ones. Those aired from like 1987 to like 1989, and that was it. Like they wouldn't come on, they weren't rerunning or anything. A couple of years later, they would make a Super Mario Brothers 3 show, and those would run on NBC Saturday morning cartoons. But it was just during that time. If you didn't catch it when that's the thing people will never really know about that era, or will like take Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer at Christmas time, right? If you didn't catch it that year, you're gonna have to wait another year if you didn't tape it, right? Like there's no like just watch it on YouTube. There's no go buy it on DVD and have it forever. Like a lot of the stuff just wasn't available. But they did release select episodes of Mario, and I never had them. And I had a friend who had several of them. And as they became more and more scarce media, I was more and more jealous of his collection of these. And then, yeah, just recently, I have them all on DVD, but I was like, I have coveted those VHS tapes since I was a kid. And you know what? Dang it. I think that's a big part of collecting too, video games as well, is when you finally come into some of your own income and you can finally own the thing that your inner child always wanted. You can kind of, it's almost like you're gifting the childhood self who never got to have the thing. It's a little bit mentally ill in that way, but I think that's how a lot of us feel about it. It's like, man, kid me would love this, so I better do it.
Yeah, exactly. I loved the original Super Mario Brothers movie. So, I mean, you can't probably see it on camera. I'll show a picture of it, but I have a sealed Dennis Hopper action figure that has a Toys R Us sticker on it and everything. When I was a kid,
from the time, or is that like a re-release or something?
No, from the time. It's got an original like 1993 or 1995 Toys R Us sticker on it still.
Wow.
So it's pretty cool.
So yeah, in case anybody wants to check out more of my content, we have 2 YouTube channels. One is Red Cow Arcade, where I sit in this very camera setup and we talk about movies, parenting, YouTubers, content creation, that sort of thing, VHS collections as well, legacy media collections. And we also have Red Cow Entertainment, which is our main channel. And we have really, there's a lot of like bargain hunting and cooking. And we have a big video game series there called Junt's Nest, where we go over a massive SNES collection that includes really weird and eclectic collectibles. Like there's an SNES rifle that was used in the military that we had it goes for like $9,000 now, but my friend John had a version of that. So check us out. There's literally like 1,500 videos. I think if you watch one, maybe you'll be tempted to watch more. So go check us out.